Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Project 19. My name is Alyssa Vilches, and as always, I'm with my co-founder, Philip D'Souza, who is going to introduce our next guest.
Welcome back, everyone. We've seen soccer players, we've seen softball players, basketball players, but today on the show, we've got a very special guest who represented Team Canada at the Olympics in Athens, Beijing, and Rio. Her next destination was supposed to be Tokyo in 2020, but the pandemic happened. So originally from Edmonton and now living in Toronto, welcome Angela Whyte.
Hey everybody, my name is Angela Whyte and I'm a 100-meter hurdler, and I've actually now moved on to hopefully participating hopefully at the Olympics in the heptathlon, which is 7 events over 2 days. I've represented Canada at 3 Olympic Games and have also been on the national team for many world championships, both indoors and out. I'm also a Pan American game medalist and a Commonwealth game medalist. So I've been in the sport for a very, very long time and hoping to, at some point, finish out my career, but the pandemic has kind of delayed that.
That's awesome. Thanks, Angela, for joining us today. Do you mind taking us through your COVID experience? And we talked a lot about routine in our previous meeting, so just how your routine has changed as well.
Yeah, and I think like some of your other guests, and I know a lot of us are repeating the same thing, our experiences are quite similar. I did participate. I was an NCAA athlete way back, so I can understand kind of how you get into a routine, especially with your preseason work and then competition season and stuff like that. For me, being out of the collegiate ranks and competing professionally, we actually rely on some of those NCAA meets, especially in the beginning, when we're coming out of our kind of our competition or pre-competition training phase. So it was weird because, like, obviously we had heard that there was something happening, a new virus going around, and then I believe it was in March when me and my training partners, my training group, we were planning on heading down to Florida for a training camp because we've done so before in the past. And then all of a sudden, in a flash, it was canceled. And so then we started talking about, okay, well, maybe we can still get down to Florida relays, which is what we were gonna do after we completed our camp. That was canceled. So then it was a matter of, like, I swear to you, it was almost every hour we were getting an email that was just like, that's canceled. Like, a lot of the things in the NCAA were canceled. So I say within days, that's when we were told that our training facility was going to be shut down as well. So being in Canada, it's kind of tough because it doesn't really get warm. Depending on where you are in Canada, it doesn't really get warm until maybe April, May. So we were actually outside in like winter jackets, mitts, hats. We borrowed equipment from our weight room and would take it out to the track and just set up. And we honestly thought maybe it was just going to be like a month or 2, and then 2 turned into 3, and 3 turned into 4. And so speaking about routine, I mean, things changed, but the routine didn't. It just, how we went about our routine changed. So instead of going to our training facility, we had to go to, well, we were hopping fences to get onto tracks and things like that until we got kicked off. We set up a little weight room at one of my training partners. She has a backyard and a little shed. So we made our own little shred shed, if you will, kind of a little cute little gym. So we went there to lift. At one point, we borrowed hurdles from the facility and I was hurdling in the street. We tried to find parks. So the routine always stayed the same. We know that we're gonna practice, our coach sent us a workout, but it was how we were doing it that changed. And it wasn't ideal, but at least we're able to do something.
So you told us about hurdling on the street. That's commitment for sure. What can you tell us about the difficulties not having as much access to the workout facilities that you would normally be using?
So initially when we got shut down, I think the measure was that you could go into parks. So we're doing some stuff in just like open parks, running on grass. We almost kind of went back to a base training rather than our pre-competition training, which is more specific. So we were just kind of like, let's go back into base. And then once things start to open back up and we have some meets on the schedule, if we have meets on the schedule, then facilities will be open. That never really ever happened. So we were in parks, and then the parks got shut down. So that's when we went out into the streets. I had one of my training partners there's a long street in front of her house, and she was doing intervals on that. There was a park that had that we were able to get to that had like a little gravel strip that we were doing our sprints on and sled pulls and things like that. Then after a while, they did open up a couple of the tracks. So we were able to get onto some actual tracks. And then slowly but surely things started to change. So we were able to get back into our weight room, which was nice. And back onto our normal track. And then all of a sudden, second wave starts to hit and things start to get shut down again. So then our weight room was shut down, but the track wasn't. So we actually had to we would go to our facility and our weights were moved outside, and they created like a little kind of makeshift weight room. Then at this point, I believe because of the more information that came out about COVID and how we can help stop the spread, athletes that are training to try to qualify for the Olympics, we've been given an exemption. So we do have access, but it's limited access. So we still have to follow protocols, but we're now in our groups. So we have our own little quarantine group, if you will, or training group. We have specific times in the weight room, specific times on the track, and they're not as free for all as they used to be, where you could just take your time to do your workout. So everything has to be very timed very, very well so you can get the most out of your workout.
Right, and with Ontario being in a new state of emergency, everything is shutting down. The rules are more strict than they were before. Has that affected your training schedule?
We still have our exemption, so that's really nice. I think because we realize that at this point, the Olympics are going to happen. So, and we see I think the tough part is seeing other countries, and that's the thing with social media. You can see other athletes training. Perhaps they've gone to a camp somewhere. I know a lot of the English athletes or Great Britain athletes are in training camps in Dubai and things like that, whereas where the Canadian measures are kind of recommending that we don't travel because we might be stuck. So that's been tough. But we still do have an exception. We just have to make sure that we're doing the best that we can to be as safe as possible so that we don't cause our facility to be completely shut down because of an outbreak. So we're still wearing masks when we're not actually doing something on the track or in the weight room, and our numbers are reduced. So we can't have very many people around. But I mean, it's something, and we're trying to make it work.
So, Angela, can you tell us a little bit about the traveling aspect of, obviously in a pandemic, people aren't really traveling as much. And as an athlete yourself, that's something that you would normally be doing a lot. So tell us about the struggles when it comes to not being able to travel.
Yeah, that's been the toughest part. Because we talk about having a routine, and then with a routine comes a plan, and we just can't plan. So our federation, Athletics Canada, had some camps planned in the Caribbean and in the United States. But again, it's similar to last year where we have a plan and then slowly but surely that plan falls apart. So as of right now, we're recommended not to travel. And if we do travel, there is... and I mean, at some point, I guess you can take a risk, but we've been notified that we might get stuck, especially if we can't, because we have that regulation now where you have to test negative for COVID think within 72 hours of going onto a flight to come back into Canada. So right now it's just a balancing act, right? So, because the thing is, again, the Olympics are going to happen with or without us, without Canadian athletes, if we're not ready or if we haven't qualified. And that's the biggest thing, is that we need to get to meets to qualify. And being that Canada doesn't have the greatest weather, we can't have meets that are going to be high quality enough and also safe enough weather-wise for us to try to qualify. So normally we would travel to the States, to warmer, like southern states, perhaps even to the Caribbean, and sometimes overseas. But it's tough, because do you run the risk? And some athletes have, and they are training in the States. And then for our group, we just have to make a decision on whether or not we take the risk, if it's worth it, or do we just wait a little bit longer. So I'm just trying to make these tough decisions and roll with the punches. But at some point, we have to, I think, take a risk.
Angela, I'm going to take a little bit of a turn here, but I was curious into knowing about your job and how that impacts you and what you do.
Yeah, so long time ago, when I was actually in the States before I returned to Canada, and I was a coach. I decided to give that up, and I loved coaching. I loved the athletes I was working with at the school that I was at, but I decided I wanted to finish my career, so I came back to Canada, and I've started my own little mental training consultancy business, but that's a tough business to get into. So I was working part-time at a restaurant just to kind of make ends meet. And then as soon as the pandemic hit, that restaurant got hit hard. So after months and months of trying to find another part-time job, I was able to find a job with online order fulfillment at Sport Check. And again, coming from where I had a stable job coaching, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And that job gave me the opportunity to at least cover some of my bills. But now we're in a state where I'm not working. I've got no hours. And that's been really tough, because being an athlete, again, it's a balancing act. I can't have a full-time job and do track at the level that I want to. So you have to, again, it's a balancing act, because you also still need to put food on your table and pay your bills. But you also don't want to do it at the expense of your dreams. So that job was helping me, get through. But now we're just like, there's nothing, they have to give hours to the managers and full-time employees, which I totally understand. So now again, it just goes along with the struggle of trying to do things the best that you can so that you can pursue your dream. And that doesn't change. It just going to continue to keep looking for jobs that will help me reach the goals that I've set out for myself, and not take away from that just because I need to, pay some bills. So it's tough. It's tough.
For sure. Angela, I was actually really interested in the sports psychology program or the consultancy that you were talking about. Do you mind going a little bit more in depth about that?
Yeah, so back when I was in the States and I was training and competing and also coaching, I had the opportunity to earn my master's degree in, I was at the University of Idaho, so it's called Movement and Leisure Sciences, and my emphasis was in sports psychology. So while I was still in the States working with athletes, I kind of created a program to help educate them on the mental aspects of athletics and sport, and would have seminars on a weekly basis, and then also do some one-on-one sessions. So essentially what I do is just help athletes or performers in general. It could be dancers, actors, anybody that performs, kind of be able to get the most out of their performances, be able to set goals appropriately so that they're making sure that they're on the right trajectory for their long-term goals, help with self-confidence, mental plans or pre-competition plans, if you will. And sometimes I'm just a person to talk to, because it can be hard for athletes to either talk to their coaches or talk to other teammates. And so I'm kind of like a third party person that they can put in their arsenal of people that help them reach what they are trying to accomplish. So I know there's so many sayings about, sport is like 10% physical and 90% mental, or whatever the case is. But truly, I think sports is such a unique arena in that obviously we're working on ourselves physically, but we're also working on ourselves mentally, and these things carry over into other aspects of our life. And sometimes we can get bogged down with doubt, and failure can start to kind of get to us. So I just help athletes realize the skills that they probably already have, maybe help them fine tune that, be another ear to bounce ideas off of. Big time, I'm into problem solving. So how do we fix things so that we can be back on track, pun intended, sometimes. And the biggest thing for me is making sure athletes enjoy what they're doing. So I know it's not always going to be fun. There's going to be workouts that suck. There's going to be, losses that really hurt. But on a day-to-day basis, finding the things that remind us why we're doing the thing that we're doing, and just being a kid again and playing. Like, that's what sports are. And even, again, performance in general is finding the joy and expressing that joy and spreading it to other people.
I know that doubt is such a recurring theme, especially as an athlete, but in any individual's day-to-day lives. Do you mind explaining how you deal with the feeling of doubt and what you do to cope with the negative feelings?
Yeah, I mean, everybody experiences doubt all the time. And I think with sport, it might be a little bit more apparent or in our face. For me personally, I just kind of have I've always been the person who's like, I don't know enough. Like, I can't read the future. Like, I can't predict the future. So I might as well just try. And I think sometimes just breaking things down into smaller parts and knowing that A, either I know that I can do something, or B, I know I can at least try something and try something new. And I really get focused on trying to master whatever skill it is that's in front of me, rather than thinking about the bigger picture. And I think that's where a lot of the doubt is. But the thing is, anytime you line up for a race or you get out there to compete, you don't know how it's going to end up. And I think trying to predict is where a lot of that doubt comes from, rather than sticking to the things that you do know and the things that you can control. That's a huge one, is sticking to the things that you know you can control. And then ultimately, man, just like go for it. If you fail, you fail. But a lot of times there's a lot of fun in failure, because there's always usually a funny story that can come out of it, or an inspiring story. But if you are so paralyzed by the doubt, you will never have that story to tell, whether or not that is a triumphant story or maybe a failure story. But again, doubt's going to come, but I think if you just go, I know that maybe I'm not the best, but that's not what this is about. This is me experiencing this, trying something new, and man, just having some fun with it too. Like, even if you are going to look, I always tell people, I'm not afraid to look like a fool doing something, because at least I'm trying, and you never know what's going to happen at the end, as long as you put in full effort.
Angela, that was honestly really well put. And even if you look towards what's happening today with COVID and over the past 10, 11 months, doubt is something that's been on everyone's mind, really. So what sort of things have you been doing during the pandemic to cope with the doubt or the uneasy feelings that come alongside with the pandemic?
Yeah, and I mean, again, 4 years ago, well, I guess coming up on 5 years ago, when I decided to quit my job, move away from comfort and the things that I had earned or worked on back in the United States, I never thought that this was going to happen. I thought by this time I would have retired from sport and moved on to the next chapter of my life. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that we have these plans, but we also have to be flexible enough to change them. And also know that sometimes our timelines aren't going to look the way that we expected them to look, and that's okay, right? I think we always like to think that things should be exactly this way, and we just have to leave room for that it's not going to, and then just continue to keep working, keep problem solving, use your creativity, and not be afraid to try something new. And a lot of times I kind of feel like maybe not for everybody, because they don't have the luxury to or have the freedom to just kind of like be so free with, their time, but see if you can do something new. And I think a lot of times in hard times, it's an opportunity to do a 180, maybe switch your career or learn something so that you can build on your career, or start something new that you think might work out. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but this is a great time to do it. And again, I know a lot of people don't have that luxury, and no worries. I mean, if you got to grind, you got to grind and do what you got to do to survive, really. But try to see the opportunities in these things rather than kind of feel like it's kind of hopeless. I mean, I have those days, trust me, where I'm like, I don't know, was this worth it? Was it worth giving up my job? But then at the end of the day, 5-10 years from now, I think I'm going to look back and ultimately I'm going to be okay. Whatever happens, I'm going to be okay.
That was very well put, Angela. I just wanted to touch upon your participation in the community with Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ. Do you mind touching upon how you stay involved with the community during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I've not gone to any of the protests. I think probably just to be safe, because I'm an athlete, and if I were to get sick or get injured, that's always a concern. But I think social media is a great way. If anybody looks at my social media, often in my stories, I'm always posting things about either social justice things. I particularly like to post things about from Indigenous social influencers and things from our Indigenous communities and First Nations communities. I like to just support anything that has to do with social justice. So LGBTQ, that's my community. So I just like to support. And I think constantly just showing people these communities, some of the plight, but also a lot of the beauty that's coming from it. I know it's on top of the pandemic, we're especially to our neighbors in the South, we're seeing a lot of things around race relations and things like that, and political affiliations. And that's not to say we don't have those same things right here in Canada. We have people of color that are either being unjustly treated by police officers and things like that. So I think we just need to keep the conversation going. I'm always up for having a conversation. If anybody wants to pick my brain about what I think about if it's Black Lives Matter, Indigenous and First Nations rights, LGBTQ plus things, I'm always up for that. And then also my visibility, if whatever that is as an athlete, and just kind of being who I am. I think if we can just be and show kind of positive sides, people are more exposed to that, then they'll see that these communities are things that we should be embracing and celebrating.
For sure. And one more thing, just to kind of wrap this up. Last year, we were asking our guests to summarize the year 2020 with a word, and we're getting all sorts of things. That was the question on all over social media. But looking more into a positive light heading into 2021, do you have any goals in mind for yourself or a message that you want to kind of come back to?
Well, with 2021 just starting, and it just seems to be a continuation of 2020, it's been tough, but I always stay the course, right? Obviously, the course could deviate a little bit here and there, but I know what I want to try to accomplish. One of the things is, if I'm able to make this team, I would be one of the oldest female athletes to compete in either the 100-meter hurdles or the heptathlon. That's what keeps me going, is to try to do things that other people have not done. And I think ultimately, if we continue to just care for one another, if we continue to think more about what our obligations are to one another rather than just my rights, we think about ourselves as a community rather than just individuals, in the end, we're gonna be okay. But we just have to remember, when we're engaging in whatever it is, even if it's as simple as just wearing a mask. I think a lot of times we're hearing this battle between, what we should be doing and my rights. And I think if we take a step back and don't look at it as far as like, what are my rights, rather than what is it that I can do? What are my obligations to my fellow human beings, and also to the environment and to animals and to just everything that we exist with? What is my obligation, rather than somehow what are my rights? So I think if we just come together as a community and something simple, right? Like, do all the simple things, care for one another, we're gonna be okay.
Definitely. Thank you, Angela, so much for sharing your story on our Project 19 platform. I know you touched a lot of individuals with your inspiring words, and I know that a lot of people may look at this pandemic from a different perspective.
And I want to thank you guys for your platform, for this project. I think it's really good to have different voices that are kind of sharing similar stories, but maybe with different touches. I think it's really, really great that you are all putting this together and allowing us to share our stories, because it's through stories that we can help one another.
For sure. And everyone kind of has their own perspective on how COVID affected them, whether they've been infected or not. So it's important that we get different perspectives from everyone. And for anyone watching this right now, you can always reach out to us on Project 19 platform on Instagram or YouTube, or even on our LinkedIn, and we'll get right back to you, and we'd love to tell your story too.
Absolutely. Our goal is to always keep the conversation going. Well, everybody, thank you for joining us today on our 5th episode of Project 19. My name's Alyssa Vilches, and I was with my co-founder, Philip D'Souza, and Angela Whyte here on Project 19.